Behind Diana Ross's glamorous fashion montages and that unforgettable theme song lurks a production plagued by on-set slapping, body doubles finishing scenes, dubbed profanity to avoid an R rating, and a theme song initially deemed not good enough for Oscar consideration. From the script originally written for Liza Minnelli to an extra who accidentally became comedy gold, Mahogany's behind-the-scenes chaos rivals any soap opera storyline. Fact 1. The role was written for Liza Minnelli. Before Diana Ross ever stepped into the role of Tracy Chambers, the script for Mahogany had a completely different life and was intended for a completely different star. The original screenplay was titled Naughty Pines, and according to industry reports from 1975, it was specifically written with Liza Minnelli in mind as the lead actress. At the time, Minnelli was riding high on her Academy Award win for Cabaret in 1972, the same year Diana Ross had been nominated for Lady Sings the Blues, and she was considered one of the most bankable female stars in Hollywood alongside Barbra Streisand. The script went through significant changes once Berry Gordy and Motown Productions decided to develop it as a vehicle for Diana Ross instead. When Ross came aboard the project, the entire story was reimagined and rewritten to better suit her persona and Berry Gordy's vision for showcasing her talents. The transformation from Naughty Pines to Mahogany wasn't just a title change, but represented a fundamental shift in the character and the story's direction. Where the original script would have been tailored to Minnelli's theatrical and musical comedy strengths, the final version became a dramatic, rags-to-riches fashion world melodrama designed specifically to highlight Ross's glamour, ambition, and star power. This behind-the-scenes casting history adds an interesting layer to the film's legacy, especially considering that Minnelli had beaten Ross for the Best Actress Oscar just 3 years earlier. The role that was meant to be Minnelli's second major film became Ross's follow-up to her critically acclaimed debut, setting the stage for one of the most chaotic productions in 1970s cinema. Fact 2. Diana slapped Berry Gordy on set. The tension between Diana Ross and Berry Gordy during the filming of Mahogany reached a breaking point in one of the most dramatic moments in the production's troubled history. According to accounts from people who were there, Ross actually slapped Gordy across the face in front of the entire film crew during a heated disagreement about having to reshoot a scene yet again. The incident left everyone on set in stunned silence, watching as the former lovers clashed in what must have been one of the most uncomfortable moments imaginable for everyone present. What made the situation even more awkward was that Gordy had kept the British crew that had been hired by the original director Tony Richardson. So, these international film professionals were witnessing this very personal conflict between an American music mogul and his former girlfriend. The crew reportedly stood frozen, unsure of how to react, as Gordy rubbed his cheek and tried to figure out how to move forward with filming after such a public confrontation. By this point in production, Gordy and Ross had been broken up for several years, but their working relationship was clearly strained to the breaking point. The incident highlighted just how difficult the production had become, with two strong personalities who shared a complicated romantic and professional history now forced to work together in the high-pressure environment of a film set. Gordy was directing his first movie and trying to maintain control of a production he was personally financing, while Ross was exhausted from constant retakes and his micromanaging directing style. The slap became legendary among those who worked on the film as a symbol of just how chaotic and emotionally charged the Mahogany set truly was. Fact 3. The Oscar-winning director got fired. Berry Gordy made the shocking decision to fire the film's original director, Tony Richardson, after only 6 weeks of shooting in Chicago, and the circumstances behind this firing were remarkably petty, given Richardson's impressive credentials. Richardson was a highly respected British filmmaker who had won Academy Awards for Best Director and Best Picture for his 1963 film Tom Jones, and he had also directed acclaimed movies like A Taste of Honey and Look Back in Anger. Despite this impressive resume, Gordy dismissed him over a disagreement about which actor should be cast in a relatively minor role in a scene. The final confrontation happened when Richardson and Diana Ross disagreed about casting an actor for a particular scene, and Gordy came in to mediate the situation. The actor auditioned for all three of them, and Richardson initially agreed to go with the choice that Gordy and Ross preferred. However, when it came time to actually film the scene, Richardson brought in his own choice of actor instead, which led to a direct confrontation with Gordy on set. This act of defiance was the last straw, and Gordy immediately fired Richardson from the production. What makes this situation even more unusual is that Gordy, who had never directed a film before in his life, decided to take over directing duties himself rather than hiring another experienced director. He justified the decision by claiming that Richardson hadn't captured the feeling of blackness, the black point of view. But the abrupt mid-production change meant that a first-time director was now responsible for completing a major motion picture. Richardson reportedly received a $200,000 settlement, and according to some reports, the scenes he had already filmed were not reshot under Gordy's direction. Fact 4. The theme song was rejected by the Academy. In one of the city's most embarrassing moments for the film and its creators, theme from Mahogany, which featured the subtitle, "Do You Know Where You're Going To?" was initially deemed qualitatively ineligible for an Academy Award nomination by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. This ruling essentially meant that the Academy had decided the song simply wasn't good enough to even be considered for the Best Original Song category, despite the fact that it had become one of the most popular songs of the year and would eventually reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in January of 1976. The official reason given by the Academy was that eligible songs had to relate to the total theatrical entity of the film itself and be part of the film's dramatic, emotional, and atmospheric mood. However, the phrase "qualitatively ineligible" made it clear that the Academy members believed the song lacked the necessary quality standards for Oscar consideration. This decision caused an immediate uproar in the entertainment industry, as many people felt the song was being unfairly dismissed despite its obvious commercial success and popularity with audiences. Berry Gordy refused to accept this rejection and launched an aggressive lobbying campaign to get the Academy to reverse its decision. His efforts paid off when the Academy ultimately changed course and allowed the song to be nominated for Best Original Song at the 48th Academy Awards. The song ended up losing to "I'm Easy" from the film Nashville, but the fact that it received a nomination at all after being initially rejected remains one of the most unusual stories in Oscar history and demonstrated Gordy's determination to fight for recognition. Fact 5. The song wasn't written for the film. Despite being known as the theme from Mahogany and being so closely associated with the film that most people assume it was written specifically for the movie, the song "Do You Know Where You're Going To" actually has a completely different origin story. The song was originally written by composers Michael Masser and Gerry Goffin back in 1973, a full 2 years before Mahogany was released. And it was initially recorded by Motown singer Thelma Houston as a potential single for her own career. Houston had been recording for Motown for years without ever achieving a major hit, and Masser and Goffin had written "Do You Know Where You're Going To" with the hope that it might be her breakthrough moment. She went into the studio and recorded a complete version of the song with slightly different lyrics than the version that would eventually appear in the film. However, for reasons that remain unclear, Motown executives decided not to release Houston's recording, and the song sat unused in the company's vault for 2 years. When Berry Gordy asked Michael Masser to compose music for Mahogany and specifically requested a theme song for the movie, Masser remembered the unreleased track he had written with Goffin. He revisited the song, made some adjustments to the lyrics to better fit the storyline of Tracy Chambers and her journey from Chicago to Rome, but kept the arrangement and the memorable chorus largely intact. The song was then given to Diana Ross to record, and it became one of the biggest hits of her solo career. while Thelma Houston's original version remained unreleased until it eventually leaked years later. Fact 6. Diana Ross designed 50 costumes, taking 8 months. Diana Ross took on an ambitious dual role in Mahogany by not only starring in the film, but also serving as the official costume designer, and this decision ended up having major consequences for the production schedule. According to promotional materials from the film, Ross designed and oversaw the production of 50 complete outfits for the movie, a process that stretched from March through November of 1974 and put the entire production significantly behind schedule. Ross had studied fashion design and illustration during her high school years at Cass Technical High School in Michigan, and she had even helped design and sew some of the costumes for the Supremes during her time with the group. When the opportunity came to design for Mahogany, she saw it as a chance to fulfill a childhood dream of becoming a fashion designer. Berry Gordy was initially skeptical about letting her take on this responsibility, but Ross eventually convinced him to give her creative control over the wardrobe. For inspiration, Ross drew heavily from Japanese kabuki theater and from colorful Asian kites she had discovered at a shop in Los Angeles. She explained in interviews that the kites were made of paper, but featured incredible colors like purples and oranges, and many of these same bold color choices ended up in the clothes she designed for the film. Ross worked alongside wardrobe coordinator Susan Gertzman, who was credited with helping bring Ross's designs to life, though Gertzman had to diplomatically describe Ross's work as remarkable for its freshness and originality when speaking to the press. The 8-month design process meant that filming had to be adjusted around Ross's costume creation schedule, adding both time and expense to an already complicated production. Fact 7. Diana walked off set before filming ended. The already tense relationship between Diana Ross and Berry Gordy finally reached its absolute breaking point near the end of production, when Ross made the dramatic decision to simply walk off the set and never return. After enduring weeks of constant retakes and Gordy's perfectionist directing style that had him filming the same scenes over and over again, Ross was asked to do yet another take of a scene she had already performed multiple times, and this request became the final straw that ended her participation in the film. According to people who witnessed the incident, Ross didn't just storm off in anger for a few hours to cool down. Instead, she methodically packed up all of her belongings, left the production location, and made it clear she was done with the entire project. This left Berry Gordy in an incredibly difficult position because there were still scenes that needed to be completed in order to finish the movie, and his star had just quit without any intention of coming back to complete her work. Rather than trying to convince Ross to return or attempting to negotiate some kind of compromise, Gordy made the decision to move forward and finish filming without her by using body doubles to stand in for Ross in the remaining shots. This meant that some of the final scenes in the movie that appear to feature Diana Ross are actually other people shot from behind or from angles where their faces aren't clearly visible. The fact that a major motion picture had to be completed using body doubles because the lead actress abandoned the production before filming was finished remains one of the most unusual endings to a Hollywood shoot in the 1970s. Fact 8. The profanity was dubbed for a PG rating. One of the most obvious examples of post-production editing in Mahogany comes during a heated argument scene between Tracy and Brian, where careful viewers can clearly see that Diana Ross's lip movements don't match the words that are actually heard on the soundtrack. In this confrontational moment where tensions between the two characters reach their peak, Ross very clearly mouths the words, "Fuck you, Brian," with unmistakable clarity, but the audio track that plays over the scene has been dubbed to have her say, "Forget you, Brian," instead. This obvious dubbing was done specifically to avoid getting an R rating from the Motion Picture Association of America, which would have limited the film's potential audience and box office earnings. By replacing the profanity with a more family-friendly alternative in post-production, the filmmakers were able to secure a PG rating that allowed younger audiences to see the film and made it more appealing to a broader range of moviegoers. The same technique was used in at least one other scene in the movie, where Billy Dee Williams can be seen saying one word in a long shot, but a different, less offensive word is heard on the audio track. Interestingly, this kind of obvious dubbing to avoid harsher ratings was fairly common in 1970s filmmaking, as studios tried to balance the desire for more realistic and adult dialogue with the commercial necessity of reaching the widest possible audience. However, the dubbing in Mahogany is particularly noticeable because Ross's lip movements are so clear and easy to read, making it impossible for attentive viewers to miss the disconnect between what they're seeing and what they're hearing. Fact 9. A background extra became unintentional comedy. One of the most memorable moments in Mahogany happens completely by accident, thanks to a background extra who apparently didn't get the memo about how to behave during a dramatic scene. During the Chicago ghetto photoshoot sequence, there's a heated argument between Tracy, played by Diana Ross, and Brian, played by Billy Dee Williams, where the two main characters are having an intense confrontation right in the middle of a crowded urban setting with dozens of people around them. In this scene, one particular background actor was positioned directly between Ross and Williams, standing in the middle of their argument as it unfolds. While all of the other extras in the scene do what they're supposed to do by looking away and pretending not to notice the loud conversation happening right in front of them, this one man does the complete opposite. He stands there watching the argument play out with rapt attention, turning his head back and forth from Ross to Williams with each line of dialogue they deliver, exactly like someone watching a tennis match as the ball goes from one side of the court to the other. The extra's performance is so distracting and so perfectly timed that it completely undermines what's supposed to be a serious dramatic moment and turns it into an unintentional comedy scene. Movie fans who have noticed this detail often point to it as the perfect example of the kind of quality control issues that plagued the Mahogany production. Nobody knows whether this background actor was genuinely confused about his blocking or if he was just having fun with the scene, but his tennis match head movements have made him a legend among people who love finding bizarre details in movies. Fact 10. A real Russian princess played herself. Among the cast of Mahogany was an actual member of Russian royalty who appeared in the film playing herself, bringing an authentic touch of aristocratic glamour to the Rome fashion sequences. Princess Irene Galitzine, spelled G-A-L-I-T-Z-I-N-E, was born in 1916 in Tiflis, Russia, which is now called Tbilisi and serves as the capital of the country of Georgia. When she was only 10 months old, her family was forced to flee Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution, and they eventually settled in Rome, Italy, where she would spend most of her life. After studying art and design, Princess Galitzine became an assistant to the Fontana sisters, who owned a highly successful fashion house in Italy. She launched her own fashion design career in 1959 and quickly became one of the most sought-after designers in the world. Her client list read like a who's who of international celebrities and included some of the most famous women of the 20th century, such as Elizabeth Taylor, Audrey Hepburn, and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, who all wore her elegant and sophisticated designs. When Mahogany was filmed in Rome, the production incorporated Princess Galitzine and her real fashion work directly into the movie. The charity fashion show scene that appears in the film actually showcased Princess Galitzine's genuine spring collection, giving audiences a look at authentic high fashion from one of Europe's most prestigious designers. Her presence in the film added a layer of credibility to the fashion world scenes that would have been impossible to achieve with just costumes and sets alone. Princess Galitzine continued her successful design career until her death in Rome in 2006. Fact 11. The fashion show scene. Used 500+ people. The charity fashion show sequence that appears in Mahogany was one of the most logistically complex and expensive parts of the entire production, requiring a massive coordinated effort that took 4 full days to complete. According to production records, the filmmakers had to hire and coordinate over 500 actors and extras just for this single sequence, making it one of the largest crowd scenes in any film released in 1975. The scale of this production was enormous by any standard, as bringing together that many people required careful planning for everything from wardrobe and makeup to positioning and movement throughout the scene. Each of those 500-plus people had to be costumed appropriately to look like wealthy attendees at a high society fashion event in Rome, and they all needed to be directed on where to stand, when to move, and how to react to what was happening on the runway. The 4-day filming schedule meant that all of these extras had to be available and coordinated across multiple days of shooting, adding significantly to the production costs and complexity. What made this scene even more special was that it featured Princess Galitzine's actual spring fashion collection rather than costumes created specifically for the movie. This meant that real, wearable haute couture designs from one of Europe's top fashion houses were being showcased on screen alongside the more theatrical and controversial costumes that Diana Ross had designed for her character's fashion show. The combination of authentic high fashion and Hollywood spectacle, all coordinated with hundreds of extras filling an elegant venue, created one of the most visually impressive sequences in the film and demonstrated the ambitious scale of Berry Gordy's vision for the movie. Fact 12. It was filmed at the iconic Marshall Field's. The Chicago department store scenes in Mahogany were filmed at one of the most legendary and iconic retail locations in American history, the Marshall Field's flagship store, located at 111 North State Street in downtown Chicago. This magnificent building, which was designated as a National Historic Landmark, served as the perfect backdrop for Tracy Chambers' early scenes in the film, where she works as an assistant to the head buyer while dreaming of becoming a famous fashion designer. Marshall Field's was not just any department store, but was considered one of the grandest and most prestigious shopping destinations in the United States during its heyday. The State Street location featured stunning architecture and elaborate interior design that gave the film an authentic sense of elegance and grandeur that would have been impossible to recreate on a soundstage. The store's historical significance and beautiful spaces provided the perfect visual contrast to the gritty Chicago neighborhood scenes that appear elsewhere in the movie, helping to establish Tracy's aspirations to move beyond her humble beginnings. Today, the building that once housed Marshall Field's still stands as a historic landmark, but it no longer operates under the Marshall Field's name. The store went through various corporate ownership changes over the decades following the film's release, and the Marshall Field's brand eventually disappeared from the retail landscape. For fans of Mahogany and for people interested in Chicago history, the film serves as a time capsule that preserves images of this legendary department store during its glory days, offering viewers a glimpse into a retail experience that represents a bygone era of American shopping culture. Fact 13. Berry Gordy called his ex a product. One of the most revealing and disturbing comments about Berry Gordy's attitude toward Diana Ross during the production of Mahogany came from Tony Richardson, the original director who was fired from the film. Richardson later recalled that Gordy had made a shockingly dismissive statement about Ross during their time working together, saying, "Oh, Diana isn't a personality, she's a product." This cold and businesslike assessment of the woman who was not only his former romantic partner, but also the mother of his child Sunhut, revealed a lot about how Gordy viewed Ross at that point in their complicated relationship. What makes this comment even more unsettling is that this same dehumanizing sentiment actually appears within the film itself. In the movie, Anthony Perkins' character, Sean McAvoy, renames Tracy Chambers as Mahogany after a block of wood, treating her as an object to be shaped and controlled rather than as a person with her own identity and agency. The photographer's possessive and manipulative behavior toward the character mirrors some of the dynamics that were apparently playing out behind the scenes between Gordy and Ross during production. The fact that this theme of a woman being treated as a manufactured product rather than a complete human being shows up both in Gordy's private comments and in the actual storyline of the film suggests that art was imitating life in uncomfortable ways. Many film scholars and critics who have analyzed Mahogany over the years have pointed to this parallel as evidence that the movie inadvertently captured the troubled power dynamics of Gordy and Ross's real relationship, making it both a professional collaboration and a psychological document of their personal history together. Fact 14. Diana Ross performed via satellite at the Oscars. When Theme from Mahogany received its Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song at the 48th Academy Awards ceremony, Diana Ross was unable to attend the event in person because she was on tour in Europe at the time. Rather than simply skipping the performance or having someone else sing the song at the ceremony, the producers came up with an elaborate and unprecedented solution that allowed Ross to perform the nominated song live via satellite from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. The performance was staged as a romantic and theatrical spectacle, with Ross riding through the nighttime streets of Amsterdam in an elegant horse-drawn carriage while singing the song. The satellite technology allowed American television audiences watching the Oscar ceremony to see Ross performing in real time from thousands of miles away, creating a glamorous and memorable moment that fit perfectly with the international jet-setting image that both Ross and the film Mahogany were trying to project. Despite the elaborate performance and the song's massive commercial success, having reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart just a few months earlier, Theme from Mahogany did not win the Oscar that night. The award for Best Original Song went to I'm Easy from the Robert Altman film Nashville, which was written and performed by Keith Carradine. That song had peaked at #17 on the charts, making it far less commercially successful than the Mahogany theme. But the Academy voters apparently preferred its stripped-down folk sound to the lush orchestration of Ross's ballad. The loss marked the end of Mahogany's brief awards season journey. Fact 15. The critics panned Ross's own costume designs. Despite Diana Ross's pride in serving as the costume designer for Mahogany and spending 8 months creating 50 original outfits for the film, the critical and audience reception to her fashion designs was overwhelmingly negative. Many reviewers and moviegoers found the costumes she created for the fashion show sequences to be genuinely hideous rather than fashionably avant-garde, with particular criticism directed at the geisha-inspired outfits that featured bold colors and theatrical Asian influences that seemed more appropriate for a Halloween costume party than a high-fashion runway. The most controversial design was an orange satin outfit with a giant dragon emblazoned across the front, which Tracy wears in a pivotal scene where she sneaks her own design onto a professional runway. In this scene, the character is practically laughed off the stage by the sophisticated Italian fashion audience, and many critics noted that this moment of rejection was perhaps the most believable and honest scene in the entire film. Audiences and reviewers alike seem to agree that the fictional fashion world's negative reaction to the dragon dress perfectly matched their own feelings about Ross's costume designs. Film critics writing about Mahogany often mentioned that they couldn't understand whether the movie wanted viewers to believe that Tracy was supposed to be a talented designer whose work was simply ahead of its time, or whether the film was acknowledging that her designs were actually terrible. The confusion stemmed from the fact that by the end of the movie, Tracy's once mocked fashions are suddenly celebrated and lauded, but audiences watching the film couldn't see any reason why anyone would actually want to wear the tacky, over-the-top creations that Ross had designed.